QB Chase.
G'day, listeners. This episode is proudly brought to you by our major sponsor, Gym Journal. Please use the code MATTER, all capitals, at checkout, and you'll receive a discount on your next purchase. Please find the link in the description. G'day, listeners, and welcome back to a very humbling, very exciting special episode of the Matter Mentality podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. I am extremely humbled to have the opportunity to have this man on my podcast, Dr. Mike Israetel. How are we doing today, brother?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Man, it's an absolute privilege and someone that I respect and look up to in our industry and field of what we do. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on and kind of dive into your brain and put it to use.
Okay, sounds good.
Now there are so many things we could start, I guess, or get to diving into with your background, what you've done. I mean, you've got PhDs, you've lectured at universities. I mean, you are a co-founder of Renaissance Periodization. You and Jared, I mean, Jared's a very successful, well, now pro bodybuilder. You guys have worked with a list of people. But I want to kind of go back to get to the start a little bit first. I'm not sure, how often you talk about it, or I've seen videos on your podcast channels, and you've really opened up and explored it in some ways. There is an origin there where you are inside Moscow, Russia, for about, I think, 7 years, if my research is correct.
Correct.
How does the person that you are now go back to that? How do we find the communist ideology and you managing to leave that area, I guess, for the first 7 years of your life, to now being what America would call living the American dream? You've got a successful business, you've got a great family, you've got a great relationship, you have a very successful company, you're a successful bodybuilder and coach. How does that come about? What does the communist experience in that early founding years of your life kind of lead to?
That's an interesting question. Because I was only as old as 7, I didn't really have much of an awareness of political systems when I was younger. But my parents really did.
Mm-hmm.
And every bit of success that I've ever had, in some deep sense, I owe to them, because they had the foresight to leave Russia as early as they did. If not for that, there's a decent argument that I would be dead, lying in a field in Ukraine right now, which is where most Russians my age are going to end up sooner or later if Putin doesn't stop being a tyrant. But so that's a big deal. So huge props to my parents for removing my sister and grandma and I and placing us in America. And I guess maybe one of the ways in which the experience in Russia maybe contributed to some of my, at least, framing around my success was that I remember hearing stories about what America was like when I was still in Russia. And, we weren't supposed to be talking about what America was like unless it was America was bad and decrepit and poor and evil and all this other stuff. And it turns out it's really difficult to suppress the truth outright, and a lot of people can tell when propaganda is propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And so crack started to form probably like in the 1960s and 70s, and they got worse all the way up until the Soviet Union collapsed. And it collapsed months after we left, which was good timing on my parents' part to get us the fuck out. Now, mind you, they weren't actually leaving because they thought the Soviet Union was going to collapse. They didn't think that at all. They were leaving because the Soviet Union sucked. And it's a good thing that it collapsed. Unfortunately, it collapsed into something pretty close to as bad, then better, and now again kind of bad. And when we heard stories about America, when I heard them as a kid, they to me were like fantastical. Apparently, in America, we heard that they wash the streets with soap and everything's incredibly clean. And we heard that the water fountains don't have water coming out of them, but instead Coca-Cola. And to understand why that was impactful, Coca-Cola in Russia at the time was like pretty pretty impressive thing to have. It was tasty in a way that is not really relatable to most of the things you could buy in Russia at the store when things were in the stores in Russia. Some of my earlier memories were when we would go to the food store and most of the shelves were empty. That was kind of standard.
Mm-hmm.
Something that folks that grew up in America and Australia and so on and so forth just can't really relate to at all. And so before we got to America, I had, as a child, envisioned America to be this really, really incredible place
Mm-hmm.
where everyone was just having a great time. And I remember when we came to America, and the first morning that we woke up in our new apartment in America, I came over, or I think actually we were in it was the same room as my parents, or like walked into their room or something. And we looked out the window, and what we were looking at in retrospect was like an abandoned office park because it wasn't built. It was built to old code, and they had asbestos in the office park. And it's this huge office building that was completely like it's since been demolished, and a grocery store has been built there. But it's totally abandoned parking lot and office building. It was warm outside. It was early June, and my parents looked out and they told my sister and I, they're like, "Look, freedom." And I was like, damn, that's I felt something from that kind of. I could feel their emotion in it. And I tell you what, for all of its ups and downs, America never disappointed me a single time in any grand way. And it really is that much better of a place than communist Russia was. And I guess you could say that because I had these fantastical notions about America, and my parents fully believed in the American dream, so to speak, which is that anyone with some tough effort on their part can build something really nice for themselves. Not only did my parents achieve the American dream, but my sister and I also did. And so we also befriended a lot of other people when we were in America, a lot of them immigrants from Russia, and almost unanimously, they all achieved the American dream in their own right. And so when people say, you know, well, the American dream is dead or the American dream is a myth, it's really tough for us to contextualize that because we're like, but it happened to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess whenever I worked hard at something over the entire course of my life in America, I always fully believed that if I was going to produce things of value, that I would be rewarded for them, and that they were going to be able to be things that were instantiated in society, and no one was going to arbitrarily cancel them or do any crazy stuff like that. I really believed that success was possible. In fact, so possible that it was obvious. Like when I studied about, you know, how millionaires and billionaires made their money, it was like, well, Bill Gates, like, how did he get so rich? Well, imagine a world without Microsoft products.
Mm-hmm.
I can't because I don't know how the world functions without Microsoft Excel, to be completely honest. Like no database software, that's fucking wild. And so that's why he's rich, is because he gave the world trillions in value and got back mere billions. So to me, it was quite obvious that if you were good at what you did, you were going to be successful. So no part of me ever questioned during my tough work efforts to become something better that like this was all going to go to naught. Like this was all for no reason at all. Which, if you're from a communist country, it's very understandable how you can think that, because there you can work your ass off and just diddly dick happens for you, and there's no ability. Like my dad made an maybe a little bit less or just about the same amount of money as a janitor, even though he was an experimental physicist at like one of the top research stations.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there's just like, that's how shit worked. Yeah, sure. So equality, it's dope. And it that just wasn't the case in America. And if you did really, really well, you could do really, really well. And I guess that's maybe one of the big things that I took from my experience with moving from Russia to America is America was built up as this place where people could have success, and it sure as shit delivered. And I never had to doubt that I was in the wrong place. And that's really, really awesome. Because, like, for my parents, they weren't building any kind of fitness empire or anything like that. They were just trying to make sure they got to the bread line early enough for them not to run out of bread, and then trying to plot their escape. And by the way, we didn't move from Russia. We ran. We were granted asylum in the United States. And in the airport, they tore up our passports in front of us as we left. We were no longer welcome back into the Soviet Union, and we didn't give a fuck. Also, they stole a shitload of our jewelry. So it wasn't like, some people, like, they move to America from France,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, oh, do you go back home? And they're like, yeah, I visit. It's nice. Very different. We do not go to visit Russia. I'm not ever going back unless there's a fucking revolution or a completely different government, and then I'll give that another 5 years before I ever go back to see anything. Because if I go back now, I'm a military age male from America, and it says Russia, Moscow, Russia is a birthplace on my passport. I'm for sure getting fucked right in the ass. So, and I would do just fine just to get only actually fucked in the ass. But I mean, like, I might go to prison. Who knows? They put me on the front line. Who knows? So basically, I think that my belief in America was strong early, and it was a liberating belief of, like, look, if I just do well, things are going to happen. It's going to be great. And I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a powerful perspective shift. I find, like, even now when I'm on campus studying my degree in Australia, which was so far away from the Red Menace, so far away from that immediate duality between communism and capitalism. I've still got, young teenagers in that sort of, like, idealistic 17 to 22-year-old range, and there's communism manifestos, and there's socialist tables and guilds and groups and clubs you can join. They're trying to free a revolution. But when you actually get to speak to someone that has experienced what it means to be on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and then actually understand what it means for them to land in a country of freedom, of choice, of opportunity, you get a different sense of life. Like, you get a different sense of, like, what they view as possible and what they've been viewing as possible. And now all of a sudden you get this eye-opening or this free sort of perspective on life. Like, I can do anything now. Like, you can, knowing the statistics and the work ethics of first and second generation immigrants, you could have come here and probably done anything and been as successful as you are. That's to me is what makes it so interesting and exciting, that you can come from such a background where, nowadays people are always victimized and there's something holding them back, and genetics cost this, and their, socioeconomic environments created this, and you literally move here with basically nothing. You can't even return to where you came from, and you've just literally built your empire of what you want to do.
Yeah. I used to take communists and socialists a lot more seriously intellectually, because I was trying to do due diligence. And a lot of them are technically intelligent, like they have relatively high IQs. But socialism and communism, to me, any extreme left-wing ideology, requires no more explanatory breadth than to call it a religion. It's just religion. It's dogma. It never made sense on technical grounds economically. It failed almost every single time it was tried. I'll put it this way: the degree to which it tried is almost exactly concomitant to the degree to which it failed. So at face value, you would never be interested in this sort of situation. Mm-hmm. But a huge majority of the people that are interested in it in the modern world, in the capitalist world, are people who no longer could believe the fables of Christianity, for example. That was a bit like big bearded guy in the sky, just didn't work for them anymore, understandably so. And they needed some other thing to deeply believe in. Mm-hmm. They needed a utopian myth. They needed a connective, cohesive, organizing force of community, because capitalism is a technical thing. You just set up the proper economic regulatory environment and it just kind of grows itself, and it can have something come around with it which is deeply impersonal. It's just like, you live in New York City, you make lots of money, you walk around, nobody talks to you, you're not on anyone's team, you're not on anyone's side, everyone's kind of just doing themselves. And it's not even, it doesn't even give you I think a lot of people would prefer that it was dog eat dog and survive because then they get some meaning out of it. But it's not even that. Like everyone's doing just fine and no one gives a shit. And that can make people feel isolated and lonely. And also just like, hey, like do what you like and make a bunch of money isn't exactly a deep divine purpose for most people. And I think building a utopian society where all injustices are cured is an amazing, amazing thing to be aspirational about. But people turn it into a religion. They have to believe that this thing of communism and socialism is the thing that will get everyone to salvation. And as an empirical question, that boat sailed like 120 years ago. That's just not it. But as a religious question to people who deeply need to believe and who have a really powerful desire to care for and help the less fortunate, it's convincing as fuck. And it's not convincing on logical grounds. They've struggled to rationalize the logical grounds, but it's convincing on emotive grounds. They feel like it's a good thing. And that's how people get into religions. And so I think I no longer really get upset or triggered that socialists think X, Y, and Z. No more than I get upset that Muslims or Christians or Jews or anyone else thinks things about atheists or vice versa. Because like, like when you look at through their comments and that's a YouTube video and some guy's like, everyone needs Christ. And some guy's like, Allah will spread his will to all of you. You're not like, oh, these people have misunderstood the world. You're like, yeah, it's religious people. I get it. Like, that's what they do, man. So socialists and communists have unfortunately embedded themselves deeply in academia and have attempted to scientize their positions. They want to sort of grant themselves legitimacy. And almost all the people that are socialist communists don't actually work in the economics department for obvious reasons. They wouldn't pass Econ 101 because it quite clearly demonstrates that the price system is more effective, et cetera, and they have to at least begrudgingly support capitalism. So, but the religious element is a big deal, and they need something to belong to. And a lot of girls, they have like a lot of heartstring tugging. They have a lot of feelings and they have this motherhood instinct that's more powerful than it is in males, and they want to save and help the world, and socialism to the untrained eye seems like that's what it's trying to do. So it's just a statistical fact that the average female will be left of center and the average male will be right of center. And so I think anywhere like young, attractive, caring, free-spirited college girls go, a lot of dudes will follow just to get that sweetness between their legs, and that explains probably a good third of the guys that are pro-socialism in college. That's kind of how that cookie crumbles. But I don't take those people very seriously, and for a variety of reasons. In the United States, I take them very not seriously. Some people on the political right in the United States are really kind of dismayed by socialists and leftists, Antifa people, and all that shit, progressives, because they think they're going to bring in a totalitarian state. But I think it's roughly 80% of people who serve in the United States military, either independent or Republican, which is to say the opposite of socialist in many cases. And the people that live out in the country and have the most guns and are the most apt to use them are also not socialist. So if the government decides to turn socialist, there's just going to be a military revolution in the United States, and it's going to go back to capitalism the next day. And there's not going to be a people's revolution because the people that can fight the best with guns have the most guns, and they're not socialists, they're anti-socialist. So I'm not really worried about that. Thank fucking God for those goddamn people. But it is really, really annoying. My biggest nuisance about socialists and communists is, especially ones from the wealthy countries of the world like Australia, et cetera, is that they're living out their childhood fantasies of utopianism. They're like spitting out a religion, and through their advocacy for various things, delaying the expansion of wealth and progress through all of the world. And that's really, really bad. Like right now, the country of Vietnam is liberalizing its economy. It has been for a few years, and it's getting richer fast, and everything's getting better fast. But the Vietnamese people, on average, have roughly the same IQ, in some scales higher than the people of Australia and the people of America, except per capita income is like 1/10 of ours. And they're objectively harder working than us, straight up. You've met plenty of Asians. I don't have to pretend about that. And so why is it that the Vietnamese live in fucking still very much shit goddamn poverty, and they're just lifting out of it? Because they did themselves a little socialist experiment. And ever since the Vietnam War, they've just lived in more or less stagnation because of this goddamn bullshit. And I can understand if they were pro-socialism, because like, fuck them, they want to live in shit, fuck 'em, sweet, like whatever, that's your shit, like we don't have to live there. But it is really audacious for people who grew up in America and Canada and Australia and Great Britain, the economically and socially freest countries of the world, the objectively most capitalist countries, that are really, 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 really pro-socialism. Like, well, motherfucker, you could take your ass to Vietnam and live there. I don't see you doing that, pussy. And I'm being facetious. I'm kidding, of course, but there's something to that. It's like,
Yeah.
but all the wealth you got was from capitalism. Do you think you can do better? And they're like, well, yes. And we're like, okay, sweet. Well, let's examine the record of history. Well, come on, they don't do that because it looks real bad. It looks real bad when you look back. So those leftist college kids, it's just like a college thing. Like, I get it. You got to get pussy, and the fucking pussy's leftist. Sweet. Karl Marx was the man. But I don't take it much more seriously than that because it's absurd. It's not like you give it a lot of thought. You're the first one to give it a lot of thought, because these people have not given a lot of thought. They've given a lot of feelings, though. Make sense for the heart.
This is kind of, I was going to kind of lead the conversation in this sort of direction a little bit later on, but you are very known for obviously your bodybuilding career. You and Jared absolutely smash training, range of motion. You guys at Renaissance Periodization, known for volume range and things like that. But one of the things that interested me quite well was actually the expansion of your personal YouTube heading into political ideology, economic reform and discussions, even things like I started to see some interesting work where you began to explore concept of self, concept of ego. What led to that style of YouTube? When we look at the Renaissance Periodization YouTube, you've got, what is it, upwards of 1 million subscribers. You guys are basically pumping out, training footage. You're working with Ethan. You got Nick Walker showing up sometimes. You guys are putting out massive training content, and we kind of look at your personal YouTube, and you are smashing out even on your Instagram now, you're smashing out the more political ideology, economic reform, economic discussions. What made you want to go down that route? Like, obviously, it's fun to talk about with you. When I have someone that actually enjoys talking about that sort of thing, it's always a more interesting conversation. But what made you head that road?
Yeah, good question. I'm a real big fan of science and a real big fan of the idea that no matter what we wish there to be, there's an objective world that is around us and built us, and we live in it. And that depending on what it is you want to accomplish in that world, how you arrange that world is what's going to allow you to accomplish it. So like, if you want to cut some vegetables, getting out a clean cutting board and putting it down on the table is like a real good first step to cutting vegetables in a way that makes sense. You cut it on the table, maybe the table's dirty, maybe you cut the knife through the table a bit and then you damage the table. There are more and less correct answers about the world, depending on how you want to do things and how what it is that you want out of the world. And to me, I was always reading for leisure and studying for leisure because I was a nerd way before I was a lifter. And I really, really, really wanted to understand how the world worked in kind of general terms. And that means to get a general grasp of psychology, sociology, economics, physics, chemistry, math, astronomy, things like that. And I would look at various fields and be like, that makes sense, that checks out, that makes sense. And then I got to political stuff and a couple of other kind of related issues. And what really perplexed me, and yeah, I have to admit annoyed me about it, was that if you came to it on the matters of fact, on just dispassionate analysis, you were going to conclude some things about the way the world worked. And they were, I would say, conciliant conclusions, which means these would be all in one big line of theoretical prediction, actual experimental research, historical analysis. Every way you came about how the world works would lead you to like, this is how you get good things.
Yeah.
So if you're asked, like, where in the world are people having the best time? What do those countries look like? There's not any controversy about that. To me, there wasn't. And objectively, there's really not. And what I realized was a lot of people still thought there was a controversy. And that really vexed me because I'm like, but there's no need to have a controversy about this because yeah, there's some nuance, but we really know what's decently a good idea and what's maybe mixed and what's probably really bad. And there's just like huge numbers of people, huge fractions of people advocating for really, really bad ideas, objectively bad ideas. And so at some point, mostly I'm just like old man yells at cloud. My wife and I just talk shit to each other in the evenings and bitch about politics. But I thought, um, I seem to have a little bit of a knack for kind of explaining some concepts in a way maybe people can understand. It's a little bit different. And I got nothing to lose. And so I'm going to go on YouTube and just talk about some stuff that basically the tenor of a lot of my conversation is like, I can't believe someone hasn't said this yet, or I can't believe there's controversy about this. And here you go. Here's kind of my take. And so I've been reading about economics, politics, philosophy, meditation, stuff like that. The meditation thing is altogether different discussion because of personal journeys and things. But I've learned a lot about this stuff, and it seems like once you start learning about it, it's kind of like some pretty obvious truths there.
Mhm.
And so many people are acting as if it's not obvious, and there's not truths, and there's huge controversies. And it just got to me. It's kind of the same reason I went into fitness. Right? There's still people telling you to do super wrong things in fitness, and they're wrong, and there's no other way to say it. And
Mhm.
so, if people who have some kind of a voice and some kind of platform, to me, it was important personally to try to at least get in the mix of the conversation and maybe steer some people into a little bit more of the right direction than the wrong direction. And in case I happen to be wrong, which I may very be wrong about a lot of stuff I talk about, especially in the Progress channel on YouTube, at the very least, it could get people to think.
Yeah.
So I don't, I generally tend to avoid like true in-depth economics discussions,
Mhm.
um, because that's kind of a solved problem. I've never seen many examples of dedicated communists or socialists go through and read cover to cover a basic introductory economics book from an undergraduate institution and stay convincingly communist socialists. Like it's like a flat earther reading like convincing astronomy discussions. It's a non-starter. You're either just not smart enough to get it, you have way too many feelings versus thoughts, or you're going to walk away a little bit different. So you can always point people in the right direction about economics, and there's plenty of people making sense there. But some of the kind of intersecting situations with economics and a couple of other things, to me, I was like, well, like I got to say something about this because I think I can make a pretty convincing case. One of the things to me that's lately been on my mind, and I made a couple of videos about it, I'll probably make some more in the future, is crime.
Mhm.
If you look at the literature in criminology, you get a combination of two things really pretty crystal clear implications for how various policies affect crime, and two, some really nasty, not politically correct implications as well. And because of the politically incorrect implications, a lot of people have avoided doing the right things about crime. And crime is such a big deal and so important and so politically relevant that, and at the same time, most people just don't understand criminology at all. They don't know it. Criminology is not taught in schools unless you go to an institution and major in it or take a course in it. And depending on who your professor is and what the institution is, you get not real criminology. You get like 50% evidence-based criminology and 50% like leftist bullshit to make you feel better, or worse, depending on your ethnicity, I guess. And then there's just there's so much wrong that I was like, oh, I gotta say something. And so like the crime situation to me is another one of those. Like, so for example, currently in American cities, we have really nasty crime rate in many cities. And there's
Mhm.
absolutely no good reason for that. And within 2 years, we can reduce the crime by a factor of 10. No problem. No problem. And it's just a matter of two things. Some people know it should be done, but don't have the political will to do it because they have a lot of feelings. Or other people just don't know that this is an issue that's been solved because they've been lied to by essentially propagandized by social media and the public school system into thinking that things are not the way they are. So if I can get people talking and thinking a little bit about crime and how that works, then maybe people will make some better decisions and eventually some small margin, something will be helped. So that's kind of how I got into this stuff. It's like, why is this obvious shit not being talked about? So
I mean, yeah, it stems from a very you very clearly early on had a logical brain, a logical, very calculated approach to life, looking at not dichotomies, but it's either it's a logical assumption here, it's a logical conclusion, or it's simply not. It's either right or it's wrong. And I find that is even now, like as we kind of see the conversation towards training, towards business in that realm, people lack, whether it be as a coach or as an athlete, people seem to lack critical thinking as a concept overall, like the way in which you design a program or the things that you follow in a gym, the people you choose to follow on social media. I have a variety of people of evidence-based coaches that I'll follow, including yourself, that I'll look at and I'll say, okay, what from this can I take? What from that can I take? Does this make sense? Does this client require a 100 set, MRV protocol in their training program? They've only been training for 2 years. Probably not. But it's like the majority of people get into training or coaching because they like training once in their life. But as an actual calculated critical thinker, they lack these concepts to actually get either a result, get people the right change, or just dissect and discern what's the application of what I've just read. Do I actually apply to this? Does my client base apply to this? Like, it just seems to be critical thinking is a lacking concept in our realm.
I agree. We can always use more of that. And I think there's a couple reasons why some people lack critical thinking. I think a lot of people who rise to prominence as fitness communicators rise to prominence mostly because of how they look. And how you look has mostly to do with 2 to 3 things. One is genetics. Mm-hmm. 2 is how long you've been just fucking working hard, which does not take an intelligent or critical thinking person to do. And 3 is like, do you use and how many drugs do you use? And so none of those involve a lot of critical thinking. So you're getting a lot of people in the fitness industry who rise to prominence because of how they look. And most people out in the world also tend to critically think as well as they can, but sometimes not great. So the only bar for entry into their brains, into their news feeds, and into their pieces of advice they take from a person is like, well, is this person jacked and lean? And they're not wrong for suspecting like jacked and lean people probably have something to communicate. But most people don't realize that just being jacked and lean means you definitely have good genetics and hard work and probably drugs on your side, but may or may not know literally anything else above that. And I don't think people are scrolling on Instagram to find out like, oh, good genetics, lots of work, good diet and drugs is just how you do things. And good diet has like 5 principles and that's it. That's all these people need to know. Like eat protein rich foods, cut your calories when you need to cut, raise them when you need to bulk. But that's really kind of it. If you just know that, you can have an excellent, excellent, excellent physique. And then people will follow you. And then a funny thing happens. They'll ask you for your advice. They'll ask you for your opinions. And you realize that when you render advice, you render opinions, people pay attention. People thank you. People try your shit. They say it works. People want more advice and more opinions from you. They're trying to extract knowledge from you. They sure as shit can't extract your literal biceps because those belong to you. They can't get your genetics. Arguably, they can't get your drugs. I don't know how many people ever look at a pro bodybuilder like, damn, he looks good. I wonder who his source is for fucking primo. Like, that doesn't happen. And so they sure as shit can't extract years of hard work. They want information. And people think that the information should be, hey, here are any number of unlimited tips and tricks and quirks and principles to get in shape. Now, to kind of complete the circle on why I'm talking about this, you have someone who rose to prominence because they just trained hard, sometimes quite mindlessly, for a long time. And now people are asking them technical questions, volume tolerances, joint angles, macronutrient distributions, you name it. And those people are now put in a real curious position. They have a few choices. At least 2 of the choices look like the following. Choice 1, tell people you just don't know and you never did, but then they don't have a compelling reason to follow you anymore, potentially, outside of jacking off looking at your pictures, which is nice. And the other choice is you tell people what you feel, purpose word chosen, is a good idea. Maybe it's stuff you've done. Maybe it's stuff you've read about or looked at and your coaches did, and you feel like it's a good idea. The third option is to go back to basics, put yourself on a journey of education, humble yourself with how not smart you may be, how little you may actually know, try to burrow through various literature, even technical literature, have a ton of frustrations, tons of headaches, and then at some point, be able to give people advice that you feel comfortable comes from the thinking part of your brain instead of the feeling part of your brain. Option one, most people don't take. Some people do, to their credit. They're just like, boom, here's my biceps. And like, you follow a lot of actual pro bodybuilders, that's their job to be a bodybuilder. They don't really give out a lot of advice. They're just like, boom, hit my chest today. Here's my workout. Here's my most muscular. Fuck off, which is great. No beef. Then you have other people that go down the road of trying to figure out how things work. Someone like Steve Hall comes to mind. Steve Hall's done a deep dive. He knows tons of science. He's great. Jeff Nippert is another person that comes to mind. Like, Jeff is not does not have a master's or PhD in exercise science, but he knows as much as most masters and PhDs because he's followed that path. But those are quite extreme examples. Most people are going to be somewhere towards the, you know what, man, because people believe me anyway, because I'm jacked, and because when they don't believe me, they're just trolls in the comments section, which is probably true. I'm just going to say whatever the fuck I feel like saying. And as long as I feel like it's pretty right and I'm helping people, good enough. And a lot of times what they do is they'll simplify their ideology down to something that feels good to them. So it'll be like carnivore, keto, vegan, whatever it is, paleo, blah, blah, blah. And because it's done like, doesn't take a lot of cognitive bandwidth to impose that ideology on your decision-making processes, you end up with a situation that like, yeah, like that's what these people say, that's what they think. And they're not there because they know things. They're there because most people mistook them for people that know things. In reality, they're just people with big arms and veins, and they took it upon themselves to pretend that they know things. It's not everyone, but that's a lot of influencers, and I think that kind of maybe a little bit of an attempted explanation of how that phenomenon goes. What do you think about that? Am I off my rocker on that, or?
I think we're pretty much on the mark of kind of what leads to that position, if you will. It's definitely a it's hard to, because you don't want to head down the route of regulating everything and kind of like, you have to prove these credentials to be on social media and talk about stuff, because you can very easily just say it's my opinion. But at the same time, like, you also want to be critical of what they're saying to ensure that people are getting the best possible, not just the best possible, but to get a degree of solid knowledge. Like there's a degree of responsibility, as Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility.
He got shot right after that, though.
He did. He got shot before it, then dies as he's saying it. So not a
That's
great
right.
moment. Not a great analogy. But I mean, to that degree, I mean, it also reinforces the crime problem in America in that sentiment.
Yes.
There is a degree of responsibility there that we have to be, as people with massive platforms, like you said, you're putting yourself out there with these discussions, but you're putting it from a position of like what I have read, what my opinion is, and from lived experience, versus someone who's just saying, this is, there's certain accounts even at the moment that are like, don't have protein bars. Protein bars are disgusting and they're full of toxins and chemicals. And it's like, just look at these people, just like, we have such a struggle getting general populations to even eat more protein. And you're creating a barrier here by saying, there's whey protein and some chemicals in this bar. Don't have it. It's disgusting. Like, to me, it just becomes infuriating. These people rise. But like you said, it's very much on the mark. They are compelling. They are energetic. They're passionate. They're just wrong, though.
They're just wrong. And they didn't reason to what they emoted to where they are. They didn't reason to it. I will say, this is a very politically incorrect hot take for you, but many times I really do agree with you about the people deserve better. We want to get everyone informed and all this other stuff. It's hard enough to get people to do XYZ. The last thing we need is for fitness industry people to be steering them awry. I get that, man. I totally do. And I think there's a lot to that. Here's another perspective. I didn't really mean this, but there's a little bit of silver lining. This is the dark lining of the cloud. It's like mostly sky, but one dark cloud. So here's the dark cloud. The people that these kinds of folks appeal to also aren't reasoning.
Correct.
And they're also not trying to reason. They just look at someone's body that looks pretty, and when they start talking, they're like, well, that sounds good. And they don't really take the time to do due diligence to see is this logically accurate. I'll tell you what, man, I don't want to shit on any fucking high school classmates here, but when I took biology in school, I said it's probably not even offensive to say that the vast majority of my classmates just memorized enough to get decent grades on the test. If they just never internalized anything, they didn't want to. Biology's fucking boring. Fuck biology. I'm trying to get fucking pussy after class or whatever the fuck kids do when they're not nerd asshole incels like me and just studied all the time. And so if you never bother to learn biology, you can be duped by almost anyone in nutritional science. No problem, because you don't even know how to contextualize things. Someone's like, calories are bullshit. You're like, yeah, sounds good to me. You're like, what the fuck? That violates like at least one law of thermodynamics, but you don't know what the laws of thermodynamics are because you were trying to get a fucking head after class and you never really gave a shit. So when we're like bemoaning the terrible plight of these people that are getting ripped off, at some point you got to ask, like, well, what are those people doing about it? They don't give a shit either, man. Like, you know, the obesity epidemic or whatever, which I don't like to call non-contagious things epidemics. Like COVID was an epidemic. Obesity is not an epidemic. It's just a lot of people getting fat. And I never caught obesity at the fucking store from standing next to a fat person in line. But you know, a lot of people that care about fat people really care about fat people's health. But the vast majority of fat people, oh, nominally they'll care. But when it comes to their decisions, they don't give a flying fuck, man. It's YOLO. It's like getting smokers to quit smoking. How many smokers really were like, oh shit, this is bad for me? Fuck. Well, all those people quit in the 1950s when all the studies finally came out, man. And the two types of people that still smoke are like teenagers who are just fucking teenagers. And, you know, they're going to do teen shit, and like adults that just do not give a fuck. And so when we're like, oh man, like people really need better fitness knowledge, like do those people to whom you are trying to communicate good fitness knowledge, do they give a shit? And to what extent? And I would surmise that the extent is on average quite low. Most people are not biologically educated. They're looking for shortcuts, tips, and quick tricks. They're not hardworking. They're not interested in working a lot for their results. They're not interested in understanding nuance. They're looking for like, I just eat this one food and everything goes back to normal. They will soon get their wish, and already are with drugs like Ozempic. Now you just fucking take an injection or a pill and your hunger goes away and you can be lean again. Amazing, which I think is fucking awesome. But they weren't like we sometimes say like, oh my god, these people need help and they're just looking for the answers, and these Dr. Oz people and, you know, Liver King are preying on them. Like, yeah, preying on them in the sense is like, you know, if a fucking condor is hunting a goat, but the goat wheels out a fucking rack and it sits on the rack and cooks itself. Yeah, sure. Poor goat, but like the goat doesn't care that it's getting eaten. It wants to get eaten for the love of fucking God, right? So there is a bit of that, because I totally feel you, man. It sucks when you're like well-meaning, good people getting ripped off by charlatans, and some very meaningful fraction of them, it's fucking tragic. But for another large fraction, nobody lost, nobody found, man. Like, they're all good with feeling their way into shit. And they're like, oh man, I can't believe that guy ripped me off. And I'm like, how can you not to believe it? You never did any due diligence or critical thinking about this at all. It's like, if you knew that little about cars, somebody at the dealership could be like, dude, this car doesn't even require gas. Like, oh, so it's electric? Nope, not even electricity. It just runs off of sunshine and rainbows and good vibes. Like, oh my God, how much? It's like $1 million. Like, I'll buy it. All right, very well. But you're not going to get the car you wanted, I'll tell you that much.
Fantastic. That's a very fair analogy, though. It's definitely a devil's advocate sort of position. Yeah, you kind of, well, you're definitely right. In the general population sense, I mean, a lot of people aren't doing due diligence themselves and critical thinking on how they choose a coach, how they choose information or research, or what they see on TV. So, I mean, it's a very fair point. Mate, progressing to you. You're you're a nationals NPC level competitor. You know, you've trained competitors. You trained with Jared. I mean, at points here, you guys have Nick Walker in your system. How do you go from? I mean, to me, it's a very clear kind of like bodybuilding. To me is just an absolute representation of hard work, grit, and just sucking it up. Like, you just get in the suck and you just do it. And, you know, yes, you apply knowledge and nuance, but like realistically, it's just hard work consistently done over a period of time. How do you get to RP? I know it's a very, very long-winded question, but from that sense of coming from somewhere like Russia, you're growing up in America now as a child, as a teen, you're going through study, university. How do you get to, I want to change well, not even be changed, change might be the wrong word, but I want to change the fitness scape. I want to be in this realm of all things you could have chosen.
Yeah.
As I said previously, you would have been an elite at whatever you probably chose to do. It's
I don't know
showing
about
the
that.
fact that you're elite. Well, you're elite in the sense of successful. Will you successful?
Thank
You,
you.
you know, you're in BJJ. You're pretty successful as a physique competitor. Your RP is definitely successful. So
Yeah.
how do we get there? What goes to you like, I'm coming from communist Russia to I'm going to change fitness. I'm going to become this profile and this personality in the fitness scape and social media.
I love that question. It's very interesting that you ask it because just a little bit ago, I was thinking about this, and I was talking to my wife about it actually last night. Um, she didn't do the dishes again, so I had to raise my hand. You know, I'm kidding. I hope she doesn't hear this because she actually beat my ass. That bitch scares the fuck out of me. I love that hoe. Anyway, I am not a goal-oriented person.
Wow.
I didn't have very many goals for myself. I still don't have very many goals for myself. I don't really have any goals for RP. I don't really have any goals really for my physique or for my competition outcome. Uh, I didn't really have a lot of goals coming up in life um, for two reasons. One, it just doesn't come naturally to me to seek out goals. Some people are really driven by a goal and something shiny in the future that they can work to, which I think is fucking awesome. It's super inspirational. That ain't me.
Mhm,
Um, and the other thing is, some goals are realistic because you have a lot of control over them,
mhm,
but other goals aren't realistic at all.
mhm.
Like, let's say I had a goal for RP to make a certain amount of money in a year. I, how exactly am I supposed to do that? I don't know. Market conditions, competitors, and technological changes could take that goal and throw it the fuck away or multiply it by 10 for all I fucking know. So I'm not a goal oriented person. I never was. What I am, very deeply to my core, is a process oriented person.
Mhm,
I didn't know what I wanted to learn. All I knew that I wanted to do was study and learn more. I didn't know that I necessarily wanted a PhD, but I knew I wanted a master's degree because I wasn't done learning. And then I wanted a PhD because I still wasn't done learning. And in my bodybuilding career, I didn't want any particular thing. But it's cool to entertain the idea that maybe I could get a master's pro card, but that's like much more of a wish and a dream than it is a goal. This is
mhm.
not up to me. It's up to the
Yeah.
judges and it's up to the competitors that show up on that day. The only thing I control is my process. And I live and breathe process.
Mhm,
And so pretty much all of my success is my genetic proclivity multiplied by my consistent application of the process. And so anytime there's goals conversations involved, I always think it's kind of curious. And it's really just not me. And I really am fascinated by people that are very goal oriented. And I never had a ton of goals. As a matter of fact, most of the goals that we had for the corporation and most of the vision we had for the corporation was by Mr. Nick Shaw, my co-founder at RP, and he's someone I went to undergrad with. He even envisioned that we would have a company together. I didn't. Um, but once I'm pointed in a certain direction, I grind. And
mhm.
I don't like the term grind because it seems to me um, to imply that it like when you grind things, they break, you know, or they parts of them fly off.
Yeah.
Um, I like to envision my work process more as like a very precise industrial robot assembling. I guess I build is better than I grind. I create and I
Yeah.
do it for
Yeah.
hours and I do it for days and I do it for weeks and months and years and decades. I'm just not really good at anything else. Anytime I'm anywhere for too long, I'm like, I should be back at home creating something.
Mhm,
When I'm building things and I'm designing things, then I'm in pure timeless bliss. Outside of that, it's just like, when do I get back in to be able to work again and do timeless bliss? Now, there's times for relaxation and all that stuff, fun, but my clock runs out on that shit pretty soon. Like my wife and I can go on a vacation for like at most a week, but after a
mhm.
week, we're like, fuck, 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 fuck. Like, we can't do this anymore. I got to get back to work. But it's not because we have these Napoleonic goals for what we're going to be building. It's just because we just need to work. It's just therapy for us. Like, this is what we're meant to do. And so I never in a million years planned on being like whatever the fuck. It's not for me to call myself this, but the greatest man of all time. No, just kidding. What is it? Have you ever seen the movie Get Him to the Greek? When he was this outfit, I asked them to maybe like a Jesus, like a great white Jesus Christ from outer space. And I'm not saying it's not my prerogative to call myself that. I'm just saying that's kind of what it is. It's like amazing. So it's like it's objectively true that myself and RP are kind of big players in the fitness space at this point. It's like on the metrics, using like the last few months, we're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest channels in fitness on YouTube, which is kind of crazy to say. I absolutely never planned that. How can you plan something like that? I didn't even know I was worth a shit. I didn't even know anyone wanted to hear the fucking sound of my voice. I'm not particularly attractive. There are people way more eloquent than me. There are people way funnier than me. And I never in a million years imagined like I would be that guy or whatever, but it was never my goal. I just learned a bunch of stuff and practiced my craft, did my best, got people around me that were really good at the shit too. We all got on the same boat and we just rode. That's all we're still doing. People like, what is your vision for the YouTube channel? I'm like, let's keep doing a better and better job and seeing what happens. And this is as good as it gets for me. So I legitimately have no idea how else I would construct the problem. So I didn't like. It's cool in retrospect. It's kind of really disappointing. Maybe someone to like. I have people now, which is a trip, that like look up to me, which is weird because I'm like, dude, I jack off in the bathroom at night just like anyone else, and pathetically, I might add, even more pathetically than most people. Oh yeah, I just jack off to pictures of myself. Yeah, but basically, people, like, you want this grand story arc.
Yeah.
Of like, I knew that I didn't know shit, man. I didn't know shit. When I was in high school, I had this whole big struggle with attention deficit disorder and having to be medicated for it. That occupied I just wanted my brain to work normally. I also didn't ever know that was going to happen. In college, I had a repeat of that because the medication stopped working and I failed out of college. And then I came back and I just kind of wanted to, like, get my degree and, for the love of God, finish college or something. And then I was like, well, I don't have anything to do with after college, but I really want to learn a lot more about how to get bigger and stronger. So I'm going to go into master's program. And then I was like, I need a job. So I went to New York City and got a job being a personal trainer. And then halfway through that, I was like, I don't know nearly as much as I want to know. And I went and got enrolled in a program for a PhD in sport physiology. And then my job was, my goal was like, I'm going to train a few clients on the side, do some diet coaching, and then like just be a professor. And my plan was to make like $100,000 a year and have like a house and a family, and it was going to be great. And that would have been such a fulfilling life. I never want anything more than that. I still don't. My wife and I still, TMI, but we still spend approximately the same amount of money as we would, same order of magnitude of money as we would have had we done that. And like all of a sudden, RP became a thing, and we just kind of tried to do better and better and better. And then it got better, and then started making kind of a lot of money, and then an absurd amount of money, and then an obscene amount of money, and then the YouTube and the suite of apps we have. And then so all the stuff is really grandiose, but I never planned it, man. I never in a million years planned it. I don't know how the fuck you'd plan something like that. And if you did plan it and it went well, it's either you're a statistical anomaly, or you're some kind of goddamn mad genius who knows how the structure of the universe unfolds before it does. And I want to know what the fuck you're going to think next. Now, mind you, I do have visions for like where I want our apps to go and how they want to develop. But at the end of the day, they don't develop. Vision is useless without really good engineers and really good visionaries and people communicating and actually doing the fucking work. So, if I can impose that on anyone, get their thoughts going. I have every now and again people contact me like, kind of for success tips. Success is point yourself generally into the direction that you think is good, and work and learn and create and do it over and over and over and over. Do it in loud noises, do it in silence, do it when people are watching, do it when people aren't. People say like, oh, you're Dr. Mike, and it's like this thing. It's like a meme. It's like, wow, you're this like special person that did some pretty cool shit. Well, I created Dr. Mike in a basement laboratory when I was a PhD student for 3 straight years. I missed multiple days of sunlight because I was in the lab all the time, learning and researching and training and thinking and reading. Like, how do you know all this stuff? What the fuck do you think I did with 3 years of my life? Did you know me back then? No. Was I getting pussy back then? No. Did I have a Lamborghini back then? No. Now I have 181 Lamborghinis. Could you believe that? Maybe 182. I think they just buy them at this point without even consulting me. I'm like, Butlers, just go do your thing. Here's money.
It's like the end of Mr. Thieves when he gets all that billions of dollars and he doesn't want it. He just buys the whole town Ferraris.
There you go. What an excellent way to spend money. The depreciation on those cars as soon as they roll off the lot, to my Jewish self, is so fucking painful. I'm like, oh, no.
But you could make the argument, or I would position it, that part of that success comes from the fact that rather than focusing on the outcome, you were process driven. When we look at goal orientation and motivational literature, there's a distinct difference between process, performance, and outcome objective
Yes, my
goals.
man. Finally, somebody well read. I love it.
This is my wheelhouse. If I'm not knowing about it, I'm doing something wrong. But
I love it.
that to me is it's how I define my comp prep athletes, my performance athletes, my Gen Pop clients. Is you can set that magnificent goal of like, I want to drop 50 pounds in 6 months. Fantastic, cool. If you change nothing along the way, then nothing
Slow
happens.
clap.
You've just
Yeah.
got, good for you. You can say you want to be a pro level bodybuilder. No one can objectively define that because, well, how you turn up on the day, what shows you go to, what the judging panel is, how well you attend, how well you pose, all those things are going to impact whether or not you get the card, and also how many dicks did you suck to probably get there. So those things.
Hey,
also
listen, judges, your boy's ready, and I'm pretty good at a lot of things. But goddamn, can I suck a fucking dick, bro?
but that is in hindsight, like that is the limitation that comes with setting only outcome goals. When we set the process goals, I guess you could refer it to as more process orientation. It's like, yeah, cool. This is the deciding thing that I want, but we still have to deconstruct that and go, yeah, that's a beautiful, shiny thing that I want to obtain if that's what I really want. But I also need to check these boxes along the way to get there. And that's where definitively process orientation becomes more powerful than just specific outcome, which I would argue leads to why you are probably in more of a position than you are than simply going like, a lot of Americans have that red-blooded dream, like I want the big truck or I want that really fancy car and the, 7-figure mansion, those sort of things. Like, yeah, I want them, but
Nice.
there's no process towards making it happen. There's no like, I'm going to do these things or I'm going to focus on this for this week or this month or this year or this decade, and just narrow on this.
Yeah. Dude, that's really why I could have just spared you that whole bullshit and broken it up into the 3 goals. It's exactly how I talked to my wife about it yesterday. It was just really just like, I'm heavily biased towards process goals. Performance goals are nice to kind of objectively see if your process is working. And then the outcome goals are kind of both not so relevant. And look, if your performance is high enough, the outcome's a fucking sure thing. If like someone steps on a bodybuilding stage to try to turn pro, they have completely striated glutes, a well-balanced physique, and they weigh 290. It doesn't fucking matter what goal you have. You're turning pro. Just show up. So, right? Like, but if you have a really want to turn pro, but you're soft from the glutes and you weigh 180, like, it doesn't matter how much you fucking want it, which is trippy because to me, a lot of celebrities and athletes and singers and stuff, a lot of the message, which never resonated with me at all, was you gotta want it. And I'm like, you do? I actually have a little bit of a take, because you said earlier something I think is really wise. You're like, you want the 7-figure whatever the fuck, but like there's no process to get you there. How do you get there? I think there's a general process to get there. Here it is. Let's say that we have 2 kind of different people. One person at age 18, let's say they're 18 right now. One person goes, I want to create an AI system that is super intelligent and helps everyone be their best. Another person sets much more of a process goal that keep things more general. They go, I'm absolutely fascinated by tech. I'm really, really good at it. I'm going to go and start learning about tech. I'm going to enroll in school. I'm going to go to Harvard or Yale or whatever the fuck. Or whatever kangaroo crocodile institute of technology you motherfuckers have down there. I'm kidding. That's the great thing about Australians, is the fucking sense of humor is right on, and so no one has ever gotten offended in Australia. I swear to God. Koala Institute of Technology and shit.
It's a school, actually. It probably is somewhere.
I love it. Yeah, you could, oh fuck. I was reading some comments I was on a friend of mine's podcast that is a UK bodybuilder, Anth Bales. And this comment baffled me. They were like, man, Mike's like the only American that actually understands sarcasm. And I was like, what the fuck? Is it like a thing that Americans don't do sarcasm? Are we like the lame English-speaking country in the world?
it's I would argue probably to the degree in which we are sarcastic. Like we recently went to a trip last August to present in America in Reston, Virginia, and some of the ways in which I use language just did not land. Like
Yeah.
I was talking about like taking a piss on stage. Or no, sorry.
Yes.
I was talking about getting pissed on stage, as in like the
Yeah.
Australian version of getting pissed, meaning getting drunk. The
Yes.
look on the faces of this audience of like 200 Americans that are just like,
Yeah.
why are you taking a piss on me? What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about?
Yes. They don't know what that means. It either
It
means
didn't
get
land at
upset
all.
or physically urinate. Yeah.
Yes, that's what they
Yeah.
thought.
There's a lot of that. So in any case, is you got these two people. One wants to really give birth to true AI, and then the other one just knows they want to do some tech stuff. Both of them will have to go to elite schools. Both of them will have to get internships at tech companies. Both of them will have to become immersed in that world and create and test and fail and create and test and fail. But at the beginning of their journey, I would argue most people don't even really know what they're best at, or
Mhm.
even know what it is that is their big passion. For example, one of those people that never wanted to give birth to artificial general intelligence, as they went through their journey, could realize, like, at a developmental, sub corporation at Google, like, this is my shit,
Mhm.
AGI or bust. Dope. But now you've been in the fucking mix for years. You've tried different kinds of stuff, and this is your jam. But you didn't know when you were starting. You just knew you wanted something to do with tech.
Mhm.
And the important part was that you immersed yourself in it. You got really goddamn good at it.
Mhm.
And you found out two things: what am I good at, and what's my passion? And wherever those things intersect the most, that's where you apply your lever point. That's where you make big deal. And for that person, it turned out to be AGI. But the person in the other person in the example who wanted to eventually be a contributor to artificial general intelligence, what they might have done is they went into university fully immersed in the idea that they're going to do algorithms and transformer models and GPTs, and they took one class for kind of an elective, and when they were in engineering, and it was like hardware engineering, and they were like, oh my god, this is unbelievable, I can't get enough of this. And then they end up working for NVIDIA to make GPUs that actually are the core processors that make artificial general intelligence happen. There's not a right or wrong answer there.
Mhm.
Until you've been in the mix of the general direction in which you wanted to go, and until you've laid out that process of doing and working and being better, you might not even know what the fuck your goal is. Here's another one. Ed Cohen, you know who Ed Cohen is, right? The greatest powerlifter of all time, more or
Mhm.
less. Ed Cohen originally started out as a wrestler, and originally after that, he was like an aspiring bodybuilder. I
Mhm.
think he just discovered he was so fucking goddamn strong, it didn't make any sense. And then he's like, okay, well, there it is, powerlifting. It's not like he woke up at age 3 and was like, I want to be the best powerlifter ever. But what did he do? He went into strength sports and he
Mhm.
plowed those goddamn fields. And then instantly it was shown to him what was going on. Tons of people who compete in the world's strongest man, the strongest humans on the planet, tons of people who won world's strongest man. Do you know who their inspiration was? Arnold.
Mhm.
Arnold isn't a strongman, he's a bodybuilder. And they
Mhm.
just wanted to be able to do this.
Yep.
And on their way to lifting weights, they realized, like, oh, fuck, I'm 6'7" and I'm stronger than everyone. And I'm 19 years old. Well, let me see if I can do a strongman competition. You win amateur nationals, you win pro nationals the next year. You're on the Arnold stage, you take third. You're like, I'm a strongman now. But you didn't want to be a strongman. You knew generally two things. You wanted something to do with the physical, with the body, with the
Mhm.
getting jacked, and you were going to put in the fucking work. So my recommendation to folks looking for success is just generally figure out where you want to be, point your ship in that direction, and crank them fucking cylinders to push it that way. As you get close to discovering the continent of your dreams, you're going to be able to pick, like, are we landing over there by the cove with the fucking mermaids, or are we landing over there with the big spikes with the fucking harpies or some shit like that? But you can't tell unless you reach the fucking shoreline, and so you got to do a lot of work just to get there. So it's awesome if you have a specific goal and a dream, but it's also equally awesome if you just have a general idea of, I just want to do well in this world in
Mhm.
this area of the economy. And people even change areas all the time. I've known people that were in, digital marketing for years, and then they quit that and they went into personal training, and it's the most success they've ever had, and they wake up every day thrilled to be alive. Like, what the fuck would you tell them about their success journey? Like, did you always want to be a personal trainer? Like, actually, no. It was only until I was age 45 that I realized that shit. But what is the common denominator? They never slacked.
Mhm.
They never second guessed their effort. You can second guess your success, no problem. You'll get it anyway. It's not up to you. But you got to put in the effort. You got to figure out, what am I good at? And you can't figure that out unless you try some stuff. Like, I realized I was good at math when I was in school because I tried math and I was good at it. I didn't like pretend I was good at math, and turns out that was the case. And then also is, what are you passionate about?
Mhm.
Because you could be good at a lot of stuff, not super passionate about it. My grandfather was a lawyer. It's kind of obvious I have the oration skills of being a lawyer. I
Mhm.
definitely understand the vagaries of the law if I ever read into it. I have a huge respect for how lawyers construct their arguments. I
Mhm.
understand at a deep level. I'm like that. When people are like, "Oh, I hate legalese," I'm like, "I love legalese," and they're like, "What?" That it's awful. But no, it's completely logical. It makes perfect, flawless sense. That's why it has to be complicated. But like, I don't want to be a fucking lawyer. I never did. I never had passion for it. One of my best friends is a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. Did I have the intellectual capability to be a lawyer? Yes, it's pretty obvious at this point. But I just didn't love it. So there's a lot of stuff you could be good at. You got to pick the stuff that you're good at and that you love. And there's another kind of tragedy. When people pick stuff, let me say that differently. When they love some shit, but they're not good at it.
Mhm.
Like, no disrespect, no shade. It's just reality. And as soon as I say this, I bet you're going to be like, yeah, there are a lot of aspiring musicians that just aren't that good at making music. Like, I've listened to a few mixtapes in my day, and some of these are people I kind of know, like friends of friends. And I turn on the shit, and I'm like, you need to change the course of your life.
You
This
gotta
is
get
not
that
how you,
one
you know what I
right.
mean? Like, I don't know what good music sounds like, but I know what bad music sounds like. So, and most of the greats apparently in music, like, kind of had it early. These are the people that like do a standing ovation singing at a 6-year-old's birthday party and they're 5, and you're like, God damn. So, just because you love something, it doesn't mean you're going to be good at it. And there's tragic shit where people love something and they just give away years of their life to it. It just doesn't happen for them. So you have to find, the most important thing is to find what you're good at in this world. And then, of the things that you're at least pretty fucking decent at, pick 1 or 2 or 3 that you really, really like. And you really can spend hours doing them.
Mhm.
If you're good at something and you like to spend hours doing it, you are functionally unstoppable from success. Who the fuck's going to stop you? People are just going to pay you a lot of money to keep doing what you're doing. We have software developers that work full time for RP. They love their jobs and they're fucking unbelievable. So of course we pay them a gazillion dollars. They produce much more value than that. We're using them in a sense. It's awesome. But if they didn't want to be there, or if they weren't good at their jobs, we have no need for people like that in
Mhm.
RP. Arguably, no corporation needs anyone like that. And the kind of people kind of at any job that really like what they do and they're good at it, they're just heading on up. Imagine someone at a burrito place like Chipotle or something like that, or at a Subway sandwich shop or whatever. Um, if they really like making Subway sandwiches and they're really good at it, like 2 months later, they're manager. 4 months later, they're regional manager. 6 months later, they meet the fucking CEO. That's just generally how it works.
Yeah.
How many people really like to make sandwiches and are passionate about them? Almost no one. That's why most people don't have that kind of trajectory. Most people that work in fast food, they're in and out. They're just like kids or some shit like that. And that's totally fine. Get high, do your shift, roll some sandwiches. It'll be nice. You
Just make
get
sure you
off.
get high first.
Yeah, I've heard that's a thing people do, and it honestly baffles the fuck out of me. Like, I knew some people that worked like fast food, and they're like, "Dude, it was great, man. Summers, I get high as fuck, make people's burgers. It was amazing." I'm like, I would make so many mistakes, and I would be so goddamn worried about making mistakes that I would have a panic attack right there in the McDonald's, right there in the Macca's. You'd have to wheel me out. I'd go to the hospital, shit like that. But apparently that's a thing. So yeah, that what you're good at, multiplied by your passion, you take that container and you just gas it up with years of effort. Something good's going to happen 99 times out of 100. And that really just explains my success entirely. I was pretty good at fitness and science and shit. I really liked it. I just kept doing it, and ta-da. And obviously genetically I'm pretty right on. I never had trouble, like I used to be really introverted.
Mhm.
but just mostly around people that were my peers that I was afraid of social dynamics and things like that. But like around my family, I was known from a very young age of being able to be really mouthy and wordy, and I was never lacking for fucking how to explain some shit. And so I was kind of born to be an orator in some case, some sense. Like I can explain some shit and I can talk, as you can see, uninterrupted with all sorts of words at length and still make some sense out of it and get a little humor going. That's just something I was kind of born with. I not perfected it, but I've really improved it over time. But the way I've improved it was mostly just practice. And by practice, I mean just doing it a lot. And so like a lot of people would ask, like, how the fuck are you like this at speaking on YouTube in front of a camera or public speaking? How did you get this good? I'm like, years of the shit, man. And I used to suck. Years of it. So yeah, it helps to have good genetics for some shit. But then again, if you know you're pretty talented at something, you know you're pretty good at it, you put in that fucking effort, shit is going to happen. It's just not possible any other way.
I think the nuance here, and especially in Western culture, I find in Western societies, is what you've just defined is literally the simplest process to someone getting somewhere and wanting to do something that they're good at or have an interest in. I think the nuance here that a lot of people miss is the delayed gratification of being able to do it for a long period of time. If you can, like, yeah, there's a lot of people that will say, I'm really into gaming and streaming. I want to get into Twitch, and they'll pick up gaming for a little while. They might make $5 off their first 6 months. They're just like, oh, this fucking sucks, but I've got a
Yeah.
thousand followers or subscribers. The question is, or I guess the equation that gets put to that is, are you able to be process orientated for such a long period of time that your competitors simply just phase out, or you just simply
Sure.
continually get better? Like if you can do that, generally, like for me, I'm not a genetically gifted, uh, you know, opens bodybuilder. My natural weight as a kid growing up was like 50 kilos, and it's taken me
Oof.
years of getting to 110. Like it is a very slow, arduous process for me. But at the same time, if I stopped 5 years ago, it would never have happened. I enjoy
Yeah.
training, I enjoy bodybuilding, I enjoy the idea of hypertrophy, of finding a problem that I want to solve and improve a certain region of my body and muscle mass. But at the same time, like if I sit there and bitch and moan and complain about, I don't have Nick Walker's shoulders and I've only been training for 2 years, it doesn't make logical sense for me to stop training and then go, oh well, it just didn't happen. It wasn't in my cards. Well, it's in no one's fucking cards. If you stop a university degree at 2 years, of course it's not in your cards that you get the graduate degree. That's just not how it works. But can
Yeah.
you be good and passionate about that topic, whether it be law or whether it be psychology, whether it be about training, whether it be about performance coaching? Can you be consistently committed to that topic and do it for 5, 10 years, and then look back and go, okay, was this the right choice? Or can I pivot from here to something slightly different? Can I take the skills I've learned and sort of change slightly the direction to be more specific, but get even better at something that I have identified I'm good at? So I think a lot of people, especially if you look at like American culture, everything is instant gratification based. Everything is heavily like, I want it now. I can use Amazon and have something rock up to my door in 3 minutes, which is
Amazing.
mind boggling. And everything's Uber Eats, everything's Uber delivery, everything's pull this, and I want to have it now. But the ones who succeed literally tend to have a similar trend of trajectory and discussion, in that it's simply found the thing that you're really good at, you love doing it, you narrow down and got really focused and specific in that field or craft, and then from there you just did it for a long period of time. Whereas I think for most people, they consider a time horizon of long period of time, 2 years, 4 years, like, oh, this was a lot of work. The reality is, like, long period of time is, can you dedicate your entire career age to one specific thing and just do that for a long time? And that, it's like, to me, adds that definitive factor to, can you get successful from that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's wise as fuck. Another thing that I think maybe helps is the realization that there are tiers of success and being at peace with being at a certain tier and never getting to the next tier.
Mm-hmm.
But because you're at peace with that, it can liberate you psychologically to work
Mm-hmm.
really, really hard and diligently. And then sooner or later, you're at an altogether different tier. For example, let's say you're a Twitch streamer and you're making like an okay living off of your Twitch after 2 years. You got, I don't know how Twitch converts, but you got your 50,000, 100,000 followers, whatever. It's in, you play long form content. People really love when you play the strategy games, and, you earn a couple, grand or two a week, and there you go. That pays your bills and lets you travel and all sort of stuff. It's great. It's cool. If you tell yourself, look, if it never gets better than this, I'm still doing it. I love this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're like, okay, it's kind of relaxed. Okay, all right, fine. And then you go, okay, like, is there anything I can look into or read about or do some analytics about or talk to people about that can kind of improve my income and make me better at this still and let me become the true realized form of myself? So, for example, I'd say, okay, I looked back at my 2 years of Twitch streaming and I just tried to do a very informal analysis. I didn't even write anything down, no numbers, of just like what kinds of games that I play seem to fuck the hardest. And that's YouTube slang for like make the most money, get the most views. And also, is there like something I'm talking about or kind of narrating? Is there a style I do where people seem to like that more? And you don't have to sell your soul and just do that forever, but you just lean into it a little bit more. So let's say you think, okay, anytime I play shoot 'em up video games, people like that more than when I play like kind of like world building video games. And also what I tend to notice is that like when I'm just more relaxed and I joke a lot, apparently people like that. I didn't think I was funny, but people like it when I joke. And they just, those videos get more viral and they get more views. Sweet. So I'm gonna like try to do a few more videos where I play shooters. You know, I like to play all kinds of games, but first person shooters apparently like that makes money. And you know, I'm gonna, at the risk of embarrassing myself to no one because no one's watching you. I mean, hundreds of people, hundreds of thousands could be watching, but like you won't hear it from them. You know, you just don't read your comments and you don't hear from trolls either, so it doesn't matter. Or just be like, yeah, like people make fun of me if I'm fucking weird, but I'm gonna lean into the sense of humor a little bit. Some of the jokes don't fuck, and some of them will. And apparently, people think I'm at least a little bit more funny than I think I am, so I'm just gonna do a few more jokes. And after a few weeks or a few months of that, you got way more videos that do better, and you're making more money. The hypothesis turned out to be correct. And then you lean into it a little bit harder. And instead of being like, that's it, I'm the guy that does shoot 'em up games and I joke, that's me, that's my identity. You go, this is a thing that works and I'm going to keep it in the rotation, but I'm going to take the rest of my Twitch stream because it can't all be the same thing. And I'm going to try some new things. I'm going to look back over my watch and view history and monetization history and go, is there any kind of relationship I can discern for like, what is it that people think I'm the best at? What is it they want to see more of me doing? And you learn more lessons and more lessons and more lessons. And eventually, I mean, you get into full on analytics like we do on our, you know, our YouTube team here at RP, which is like thumbnails, titles, preview screens, blah, 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 blah. You can get all Mr. Beasts like crazy on that. And all that shit works too. But it works better when you're at a pretty big scale and not as well if you're at a really small scale. So that idea of like trying to be successful and it not happening is possible. But a more likely thing is you are getting success just at a certain level. You know, as long as you're okay with that success at a level, keep going and try to see if you can't, with zero pressure at all on your part, on yourself, try to figure out how like maybe I could be a little bit better. Like there's an analogy here from jujitsu that I like to tell people who just start jujitsu. You know, they'll start and they'll roll with someone or fight someone that's like, you know, really good, a purple belt or something like that, and they're a first day white belt. And they just get submitted a bunch of times and they get quite discouraged, which is understandable. And they're like, yeah, man, like one day I'm going to submit that person. And I go, that's nice. Yes, that's possible. But here's a better way to look at it. You can have victories now. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, when you roll with this guy, the purple belt, how many times does he submit you on average? Like, I think like 5 or 6. Like, I got you. Keep doing your diligence, keep drilling your moves, keep working on your shit. And in a couple months, you may realize that when you try pretty hard, this person's only submitting you 3 or 4 times. A year later, 2 or 3 times. A year after that, they don't submit you anymore except if they catch you off guard. And now it's a real nasty roll and they know it. Before, they used to be like, hey, do you want to go? And you're like, yes. And then they beat you up. Now, 3 years in, you're like, hey, do you want to go? And they're like, my wrist feels kind of fucked up. Yeah, sure. It's like reluctant. Like, this is going to be a fight for my life. And then eventually you start scoring on them. And eventually you start winning regularly. And then you get your first submission. There's a lot of fucking points from point A to point B. And it's just okay to only see that one point in front of you. So when you go to your YouTube channel, it's not that great. So like, is there anything I can tweak to make it a little bit better? Just an experiment. And if that fails, I try something else, but I'm still here doing the shit. And is there anything that I can do to make it a little bit better and learn and keep that. And if I keep that, I elevate to the next, and then to the next, then to the next, and then to the next. And sometimes that works out really, really well. One of our good friends is Chris Williamson, who's like a podcaster or whatever, and probably one of the best conversations I've ever had in my life as far as business acumen was I was on his show for the first time ever a few months back, and I was like, at the end, I was like, hey man, I don't mean to bother you, take a lot of your time. Please tell me to fuck off. But is there anything you could like recommend as far as like YouTube stuff, like thumbnails and titles and all this stuff, like playing the game? And he's like, yes. You're going to want to take notes. Let me recall you off of like we did Riverside or whatever for the recording. He's like, let me call you on Zoom. You're going to want to record this. I was like, I can just take notes. He's like, you're going to want to record this. Usually like a stream of consciousness dump. And it was like Neo seeing the Matrix for the first time. I was like, what? These are concepts? And of course we instituted them into YouTube, and it didn't make or break our YouTube, but for all of the bullshit Riz or whatever the fuck I have on YouTube, that the extra scientist show and all that other stuff, whatever it is that's the core value prop, we were able to just milk more of that and get the growth curve faster and make more money because of the things Chris Williamson told me. And I, of course, instantly sent him all to Scott, the video guy, who was like, holy fucking shit. And he just immersed himself in it. But the way Chris learned those things was talking to everyone he could and years of thankless fucking experimentation. Chris Williamson had a podcast for like forever. Nobody heard of this fucking guy, but he kept at it and he kept learning. And how do you stop a guy like that? You really don't. And like you said, most people quit just trying the one thing that they're doing, never trying to weave through the sand and adapt and adapt and adapt. They're just like, I tried 2 years. I didn't learn much. I just suck. I'm out, which is totally cool, right? Like that's me with dating girls. I tried it. It didn't work. And I'm now hopeless and alone. My wife is it's a technical arrangement. It's for money. I pay her several $100,000 a year to be around, but it's cool. It's totally okay to give up on whatever you want to go on to the next thing. That's just a part of life, but at least give up after you've given it some due diligence. And that kind of adaptive, iterative process of I do the thing, I learn some things, I try a little bit different, I see if it made an effect, and I continue on. That's going to take some diligence from you, but fuck, man, does that tend to work pretty goddamn well.
I think the powerful thing there you said too is the checkpoint goals that people, if we call them checkpoint markers or landmarks that you can aim for.
Yeah.
When the objective goal is an outcome, rather than just simply looking at it as like, well, this is going to take too long, I can't do it. For me, one of the goals I set when I started looking at any content, not like, I was in psychology, my degree, and I'm studying, I'm training, coaching people, and I'm like, it doesn't matter if I start this podcast, if I start recording information, if one person messaged me and said, you just changed how I viewed life or what I did or what I was thinking, I would say, fuck, that is my job well done. I have done now hours upon hours of like talking to people that I never in my wildest dreams thought I'm getting Mike Israetel just to jack your ego a bit more. I'm getting Mike Israetel on my podcast to talk about philosophy, train. Like, I thought this was going to be a sets and reps kind of conversation, but to get more intricate into
there's plenty of that on the internet.
There's enough of that shit. But that to me, I was like, in no wild dream that I think that those are the conversations I'm having. But the more I do it, and the more I speak with people and I ask people, like, who else should I talk to? Who else do you think is going to be beneficial? Who can I probe into? And it just gets slightly better. And then one person will share like someone I don't even know from the other side of the world is sharing a podcast episode that I've done or someone that I've been with or someone I've talked about. And they're just like, this flipped how I viewed my goals or my behaviors or my lifestyle change, my modifications, my approach to where I want to go in life. And I'm just like, holy fuck. Like if I drop dead tomorrow, this person just changed how they do the rest of their life because of something I said. Like, how do you not get excited about that? And if you can hold that mantra for the duration of your career, how do you not feel fulfilled and at least be to a degree successful?
Yeah, it's a big deal, man. I gotta say, every time I see a comment or hear from someone in real life, like when we go to the Arnold Olympia, we meet a lot of folks that like what we do.
These at the Arnold's are hilarious.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. That's all scripted. Those are all paid actors, by the way. They're very well rehearsed.
Say.
Like I said, I don't know people know this, but I'm actually a trillionaire. So it's not just billions, it's trillionaires, it's trillions. And we actually run a mock Arnold several times to get the practice for all those shots. Whole same convention center. We actually build a convention center off site. It's completely to scale. But I tell you what, man, been doing this a while. Been met a lot of people that say really nice things about how sort of whatever I said helped them in some capacity. Every time I hear it, it feels like the first.
Mhm.
And every time someone tells me, especially in real life, some shit like, dude, you changed my life, then I have no idea how to respond to it
Mhm.
because I'm filled with awe and reverence. And I almost feel guilty
Mhm.
for not having anything to bring to them
Mhm.
because they're like, you dude, you fucking changed my life, man. And I used to be 250 pounds and I'm 165 and I did a show and it's my health has improved and I love it and I have family and a wife and kids, blah blah blah. And I'm just standing there like a fucking retard with my big ass arms and my shirt. And I'm like, yeah, but like, that was so amazing. It's what you did with your life is so unbelievable. How can I take any credit for it at
Mhm.
all? And they're like, you deserve all the credit. And I'm like, and it's like, I want to give them a hug, but I have nothing else. It's such a crazy thing. And so you get one of those, man, that's one enough for me. And if you get a bunch of those, it never ever ever ceases to amaze me, and it never ceases to just be like a really baffling experience that's just amazing. And like I said, it's almost guilt inducing in some way because I'm like, well, that ain't me, man. I'm not your guy. And they're like, no, it is you. You're the guy that did this. And I'm like, i I don't know what to say.
Mhm.
You're welcome sounds rude at that point,
Yes.
and so mostly the only thing that really comes to me to say in those moments, outside of sheer stupor or like some stupid perverted joke to divert the course of the conversation and ease the tone, is I just like sometimes I like hug it out or give him the fucking old hand and just be like, I'm really 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 pumped for your results, man, and I'm so happy that you did what you did, and I'm honored to have been some kind of small part of it because it's all true, man. Like, I don't like to fucking, I lie plenty in my other parts of my life. I don't, not so interested in like lying to people to their face and
Mhm.
kind of pumping them up with, oh man, you really inspired me. Well, like, fuck that. That's fucking bullshit. But it's real when I tell people, like, dude,
Mhm.
this means a lot because it does. One kind DM in your inbox, even if you're a mega influencer, means a lot. And if that can keep you going for a few years when you're building up your shit, you're golden, man. You're gonna go places. If one person says a nice thing and you're like, it's just one person though, like maybe social media influencing's not your jam. Because if you're that fucking pessimistic and negative, I don't know if people want to hear from you at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's oh man, I can literally talk for hours on these topics. But to me, like the best analogy I give my clients, I give anyone that reaches out to me, shares is like if someone has remotely indicated I've been a part of something they've done, is all I can put it down to is I'm just a good GPS at best. I
Yeah.
might have laid out some pathways for you. I might have laid out some options, but at the end of the day, you are the one responsible for driving the car in all the different terrains and all the different directions and trusting me to take those turns, trusting me that this was the best route, implementing what I say and shifting gears when I told you
Yeah.
to, or whatever it might have been. You did the driving. At any point, you
Yeah.
could have got out of the car and told me to fuck off. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, all I can be is a GPS to what I believe is a better life or a better result. And you've fucking chose to listen to me. Like, how can you not be humbled by that as a coach, as an educator, as a content creator, whatever? Like, to me, that is just the only analogy that makes sense where I'm like, yeah, I was a part of it. I gave you a direction, but you had to do literally every step of the driving. How the fuck can I take credit for that?
100%. And also, because these people added their views to our videos or podcast listens, they bumped us up in the algorithm. They already did us a fucking solid. That's more than enough recompense as far as I can tell. And with people who have like purchased our apps and paid for them, they're like, "Thank you so much." I'm like, "You don't need to thank me, motherfucker. You paid me, $600 so far with your app membership over the last several years. Like, Jesus Christ, that's more than thanks enough. I should be thanking you." And then they're like, "Well, you gave me all these results." And that's what, hilariously enough, in capitalism is called the double thank you moment. You give a couple dollars to the store clerk, they give you a Diet Coke, you say thank you, they say thank you. How is it possible? Both people win. But
Mhm.
they do, because he needed the dollar more and you needed the Diet Coke more. And so, just the same way in our field of when people say, "Oh my God, thank you for your influence, your advice," I'm like, dude, you already watched my shit or clicked on some links or bought something. You thanked me enough. So thank
Yeah.
you right back. And we're all on level playing field. That's another thing randomly. Um, I don't try to say this often, but every now and again it comes up is like, one thing with all this, like, because it is crazy from my perspective that like, somebody of your caliber could be honored to have me on their podcast. And again, I'm just some guy in a Walmart sweatshirt staying in a fucking basement office with no goddamn friends. You know what I mean? Like, how the fuck does that work? But one thing I never had it in me to do was do the whole like status game and thinking you're more important than other people. Like, if I meet you in real life, anyone listening to this, if you ever meet me in real life, I'm just some guy. And so, like, if you come up to me and you're like, "Oh my God, are you Dr. Mike?" I'll be like, "Yep." And it's just all dick jokes, man. Like, you don't have to be like, "Oh my God," like, you can. I'm totally cool with you
I
fucking,
promise I'm a smaller dick
fan.
than you.
And that's right. I bet you I do, motherfucker. I don't care where I am. I'll compare dicks with anybody, bro. Anybody, any time of the week. I got the smaller dick. Someone beats me at my game, I'm like, holy shit, yo, respect, bro. But at the end of the day, man, we're all just human beings. So, people put influencers on a pedestal, understandably so, but like, for whoever's listening, trust me, I ain't on no fucking pedestal, man. I'm just a goddamn human being. And if you ever meet me in real life, you just speak to me however you want. I'll speak to you at, I just do this. If you start out being like, "Oh my God, Dr. Mike," don't worry, I'll bring myself down for you. If you start out if you start out kind of beneath me and speaking down to me, I'm totally comfortable with that, actually. But it is a little awkward internally for me to be seen as like a mega authority or some kind of, "Oh my God, like, oh my God, Dr. Mike," like, yeah, whatever. Like, I just kind of want to know about you. Like, what are you into? What's up? How did you find out about this shit? Like, what are you lifting? Your arms look great. Like, that's a thing. And so I think, like, for people that eventually get some repute, um, you're a person that has offered people a lot of service and you did a great thing, which is awesome. You got paid for it and all that stuff. If you want to construe yourself as like better, more important than other people, that's cool. It's not going to help you sleep at night, I
Mhm.
promise. It's much better to see this whole thing as like, wow, this is kind of wild and super neat. But at the end of the day, I'm just a human. I mean, technically, I'm a cyborg, so I have to say I'm a human to contract.
I'm not gonna lie.
OpenAI built me in
I've seen some of the
2035 and sent me
meals.
back.
I've seen some of the meals that you make during your preps. I was like, I'll see like carrots with two like Quest protein bars and two wraps with nothing on. I'm just like, what the fuck is this guy eating?
The fuck? Yeah, this guy's a weird fucking guy in real life, man. We're all fucking weird. Yeah,
Oh,
it's so funny too because like I'm not technically around allowed to be around high schoolers. That's another joke, J.K. But like it's funny all the time. Teenagers spent like wondering if they fit in or some stupid shit. Like if I'm normal, motherfucker. What the fuck does that mean, dude?
mm.
I'd love another shot at high school. I'd just show
Oh,
up
same.
wearing fuck
Mhm.
all, and like the first person that says some shit to me, I'd be like, "You got some fancy shit you gonna show me? How are you different, motherfucker? How are you special?" And I'd be like, "Oh, sorry," and you just cower away. Like it's so funny, we spend a lot of our lives trying to like really impress or really conform, and at the end of the day, like, you just do a good job at work, be nice to people. That about sums up most of life, you know what I mean?
I th- Man, you literally just described one of my favorite philosophical. I believe it's Plato described the concept of the first and second self, in which he describes the first self that we exist in is this person's created purely on the environment that we're in, the expectations of family, of friends, of social groups. But you really don't become your true self until the first self dies and you understand who you actually want to be and are in life. And to me, that was like my entire defining high school life was I just thought this was who I was supposed to be, this person I was supposed to be, and how I was supposed to be. Go get a trade craft, go do these things. Once I discovered that I actually had a knack for exploring people's heads and getting performance out of people that didn't know they had it and getting results out of people that didn't know they could do, I was like, fuck all of that. That is just not me. And I have just immersed myself in books, in studies. I don't go out on weekends. I don't party. I don't do things like this is what I want to do. And to me, it's
Yeah.
like like you kind of said there, it's like, I wish I had a second crack at high school purely because of that very thing of who I am now. But it was obviously this version of yourself in high school that you thought you had to be. And I think so many people get that wrong, where they live their life based on who they thought that first self was. Yet there is so much more of them as they start to grow up and develop and become a person. You're like, you have so much more to offer.
Yeah. In some sense, I think that's what it means to become an adult.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's as simple as that. Yes. Mate, look, I've taken up more than enough of your time, and I really, really do appreciate you jumping on and shooting the shit. I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. As we said, there was some, sets of reps conversations in there that I was like, we have that with everyone. I've listened to them, I've heard them. I love watching you on Phil Ed's podcast. They just call you the bro science guy. They call you the science guy, and you're like, they're just like dumping information at you, and you're just like, yeah, but that's just this. So like, there's more than enough of those out there. Like getting into you and actually having a conversation with someone at the depths of actual communist era Russia. Like, I don't get to have many of those conversations. The world doesn't get to have many of those conversations. How often are we sitting there with someone who 2 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall is like, oh, no, we're leaving to Russia, to America? Like, you don't get to have those very often. So, like, to me, to go live to be amongst that communist era and then be able to manifest, for lack of a word that I hate.
Oh, what a terrible word. You fucking influencer. Why don't you try to sell me some makeup next, motherfucker?
God, I fucking hate the word so much. People fucking use like 21-year-old white girls who sit coffee and telling families to manifest this new life. Like, fuck off.
Yes, the fuck does that mean, bitch? Who's going to do that work?
I just sit here and think about a better life while I've got 3 kids under the age of 5 and I work 2 jobs. Like, fuck out of here.
It's the law of attraction, bro, which we also call schizophrenia.
Give me energy on the things that I want.
That's right.
Fuck. But that's gonna be like you built. I'm not even gonna use that. I redact that word. You built the American dream out of what is literally like, you came from the Red Menace, you came from the enemy, and we're like, we got there, and almost, I could spend an hour doing this extension of the conversation, but we just did genetics and epigenetics and neuroscience last week in one of our lectures.
Cool.
It was very cool. It's very like, for studying psychology to get to understand the neuroscience of epigenetics and genetics, I was like, that's some cool shit. But in and of itself, like the genetic predispositions you had, the epigenetic exposure you had in that early childhood, you don't fit the bill of someone who should be in your position, yet you are. And that's what made me so excited when I had the chance to speak to you. I'm like, yeah, we can talk sets and reps and length and partials, and we can talk, max recoverable volumes, and we can talk all things. Like, I'm as evidence-based about that as we can be. But at the same time, like, I have this guy in an hour and a half that I can talk about like some cool shit that's going to make someone else's life better. Like, let's have that conversation.
This is all fun and games, man, until your followers like, dude, that guy sucked. That was boring as fuck. Why didn't you ask him about sets and reps? And you're like, God damn it. This experiment failed.
I should have listened and leaned into the thing that I want to talk about.
Well, dude, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's a huge pleasure, a huge honor. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I really do appreciate your time, and I wish you all the best. And is there anything that we need to know that's coming out from RP, from you guys, from YouTube channels, like anything that you want to drop here that I can send people towards? We'll have your show notes and links and all that sort of jazz below. So anything you've got going on that.
You just link the YouTube channel and we're all fair and square. And then I do have a question for you after the record button goes off. Right. But that's more related to dick size than anything else.
Trent does shrink it for me, so that's that.
Oh, no.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.